They say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I didn't really understand what that meant until the night my wife looked at me across the table and said, almost casually, "You don't feel like home anymore." Her name's Claire. We'd been together 11 years, married for 7. When we first met, I thought she was it. The one. The woman who made my chest feel lighter every time she walked into a room. She laughed at my bad jokes, pulled me out of my quiet shell, and made me believe I was worth more than just clocking in and out of work every day. But the thing about love is, you don't lose it all at once. It doesn't usually crash and burn. It fades quietly, like wallpaper peeling a little more each day until one morning you look around and realize the whole room is bare. That night started simple. Thursday, 8 p.m. I'd made spaghetti, garlic bread, a salad, nothing fancy, but a meal I knew she liked. We used to cook together, play music, argue over which playlist to use. She'd dance around the kitchen, flour on her cheek, humming some 2000s pop song. Now it was just me chopping onions in silence, with only the sound of her laughter in another room as she scrolled through videos on her phone. When I called her to the table, she sat down without a word. Her plate barely touched. She scrolled while I ate. Long day. I asked finally, trying to cut through the silence. She murmured, not looking up. You've been working a lot lately. I tried again. Yeah. She didn't elaborate. And that was it. That's all I got. I put my fork down, just studying her. Same woman I'd built a life with. Same brown hair tied in a messy bun. Same tired eyes I used to kiss gently when she said she felt ugly. But now she looked like a stranger wearing her skin. That's when I asked softly, "Claire, are we okay?" She finally looked up. And with this flat tone that carried no anger, no warmth, just emptiness, she said, "You don't feel like home anymore." It was like someone had pulled the air out of the room. I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to speak. Because what do you even say to that? Sorry? I'll try harder? No, that wasn't frustration in her voice. That wasn't exhaustion. That was finality. The rest of dinner was silent. She got up first, rinsed her plate without meeting my eyes, and disappeared into the bedroom. I sat there at the table for almost an hour, staring at the empty chair across from me, spaghetti going cold. The truth is, I'd felt this coming for months. The way she stopped texting me during the day, how she laughed harder at messages on her phone than she ever did at anything I said, the way she turned her back to me at night, inch by inch, until the bed felt like an ocean between us. But hearing her say it, that I wasn't home anymore, cut deeper than anything, because home was all I ever wanted to be for her. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing next to me. And for the first time since we met, I felt completely alone in my own bed. And that was when something shifted inside me. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't touch her shoulder and whisper, "Please don't give up on us." No, I just went silent. Because when someone tells you you're not their home anymore, you stop trying to prove otherwise. You start building a plan. Quietly, carefully. And that's exactly what I did. The days that followed were strange, like living in a house where the lights worked, but the wiring underneath was already burned out. On the surface, things looked normal, 2 people sharing space, splitting bills, going through the motions. But the silence between us had weight, like a third person sitting in the room, watching us quietly unravel. I noticed everything more clearly after that night. The way she angled her phone away from me when it lit up. How she smiled at the screen but rarely at me. The way she stayed later at work, calling it extra projects, but coming home smelling faintly of a cologne I didn't wear. I didn't accuse her. Not yet. That wasn't my style. See, anger is loud, but silence? Silence is sharper. It makes people wonder what you know, what you're planning. And I wanted her to wonder. Instead of demanding answers, I started creating distance. Subtle at first. When she brushed past me in the kitchen, I didn't reach for her waist like I used to. When she gave me one-word answers, I stopped pushing for conversation. I didn't offer to fix her laptop, didn't remind her of dentist appointments, didn't go out of my way to fill the spaces she left empty. And she noticed. One evening, about a week later, she asked, "You're quiet lately. Everything okay?" I looked at her, calm. Yeah, just tired. That was it. I wasn't giving her anything more. And here's the thing, when someone's used to you always chasing, always patching up the holes, they don't know what to do when you stop. She frowned, like she wanted to say something else, but didn't. She went back to her phone. Meanwhile, I started preparing. I opened a separate bank account she didn't know about. Nothing dramatic, just small transfers here and there. Enough that it wouldn't raise suspicion, but steady. I dug out old documents, passport, birth certificate, the deed to the small cabin I inherited from my grandfather 2 states over. A place she never cared about visiting because it had no Wi-Fi, no restaurants nearby, no energy. But to me, it was peace. The more I planned, the calmer I became. Because when you start seeing the end, you stop clinging to the illusion of forever. Still, I played the part. I cooked when I felt like it, sat on the couch beside her without touching her, shared space like two strangers trapped in a lease. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. But I observed. Like the night she came home late again, hair still damp from a shower she definitely didn't take it home. She slipped into bed, whispered, work ran over, and turned her back before I could respond. I stared at the ceiling for hours, her words looping in my head. Work ran over. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. But what mattered wasn't whether she was lying. What mattered was that I no longer cared enough to ask. That was the shift. That's when I realized I'd stopped being her husband in everything but name. And she had no idea that the man lying next to her was already halfway out the door. Because while she was busy scrolling and smiling at a screen, I was busy writing a plan. Step by step. Cold. Precise. Final. And I knew that when the day came, she wouldn't see it coming. The next 2 weeks felt like walking through fog you can't wipe off your windshield. Nothing crashed, nothing exploded, just a steady blur that made me squint to recognize my own life. I kept my routine tight. Up at 5:30, coffee black, gym, job site by 7:15. I answered texts from the crew, signed deliveries, checked rebar placements, and acted like the guy everyone knew me to be: steady, methodical, unshakable. Then I'd drive home to a house that hummed with a silence I couldn't fix. It's funny what your mind holds onto when love is going stale. The little rituals stick. I still put my boots on the mat by the door, toes pointed the same direction. Still set my keys in the bowl we bought at that flea market in Asheville. Still folded my hoodie over the back of the chair the way she once said looked weirdly handsome. Same motions. Different meaning. It's like playing a song on a dead radio. Claire's hours shifted again. She said a new project launch meant late nights. I didn't ask for details. I stopped asking for a lot of things. If she wanted to offer truth, she would. She didn't. And I wasn't auditioning to be trusted anymore. The first time she realized something had changed was on a Sunday. We were in the kitchen. I was searing chicken thighs in a cast iron, and she hovered like she used to, except now with that restless energy that has more to do with nerves than love. You always cook when you're stressed, she said, trying to make it sound light. Maybe, I said. She bumped my hip with her hip, the way she used to when things were simple. You're not going to ask where I was last night? I flipped the chicken. No, she waited for a laugh that never came. You don't care? I thought about lying, saying something diplomatic like, it's not about caring. But I was done dressing truths in politeness. I care about what's mine to carry, I said, tapping the pan with the tongs. The rest isn't. She blinked at that. Confusion first, then a flash of something sharper fear? Maybe. She covered it quickly with a shrug and wandered off, but I could feel her eyes on me from the hallway, like I'd moved a piece on the board she didn't see. That week I drove out to the cabin on my lunch break. It's 2 hours away if you hit traffic. I made it in 90 minutes. Pulled up to the cedar steps and stood there breathing in the kind of quiet you can't fake. The place still smelled like motor oil and pine cleaner, just the way my grandfather left it. I checked the propane, tested the generator, aired out the bedroom. The mattress was old but clean. The well pump chugged to life on the third try. I fixed the sticking latch on the back door, replaced the batteries in the smoke detector, and labeled the breaker panel even though I could navigate it half asleep. Doing maintenance has a way of teaching your hands honesty. If it's broken, you either fix it or you don't. No pretending. On my way back, I stopped at a no-name bank in a town where nobody knows me and set up a safe deposit box. Inside, I put the cabin deed, copies of my passport, my birth certificate, the title to my truck, and a single photograph, me and Claire on a pier in 2017, her head on my shoulder. Both of us squinting at the sun like we were staring directly into our future. I'm not sentimental, I'm practical. But I needed that reminder of what we once were so I could stop lying about what we are. At home, the house grew delicate, like thin glass. Claire started overcompensating. She cooked twice that week, lit candles for no reason, wore that oversized sweater I always liked. She leaned on the door frame while I fixed a wobbly chair and said, "Do you remember the road trip to New Mexico? When the tire blew and we laughed for an hour?" "I remember," I said, tightening the bolt. "We were good then. We were us," I said. "That's different." She studied me, like the answer was in my pupils. "I found a couples therapist," she blurted. "2 openings next Thursday. We could try." "Sure," I said. Calm. Even. Not because I believed therapy would fix contempt, but because I wanted to look the truth in the eye in a room where truth is supposed to show up. The therapist's office had plants that looked too healthy to be real. We sat on a gray couch that swallowed you if you weren't careful. Claire talked first, fast, like reading aloud from a script she had highlighted. "I feel disconnected," she said. "He's different. Closed off. It's like he's punishing me with silence." The therapist nodded, then turned to me. "How does that land for you?" I could have told a pretty story about stress, about the economy, about being tired. Instead, I said, I stopped trying to fix things alone. Silence. The honest kind. Claire shifted, annoyed. "So you admit it, you're withdrawing." "I admit," I said, "that a marriage can't be a one-person job." She scoffed, soft but slicing. "God, you love sounding noble." The therapist glanced at her. "Do you hear the contempt in that sentence?" Claire's jaw tensed. "I don't mean it like that." But she did. And the therapist knew it. And I watched something quiet pass between the two of them, recognition maybe, that made me feel simultaneously seen and done. When we left, Claire was too cheerful. "That wasn't so bad," she said. "We can build from here. We can be honest from here," I corrected. She didn't answer. Little things piled up. She started leaving her phone face up on the counter like a prop. Notifications still came in as messages instead of names. Do not disturb with favorites only, the illusion of transparency wrapped around a locked door. In her car, the screen flashed once when she turned the engine. Call ended A. She tapped the display so fast you'd think it burned her. On a Tuesday, I came home to find a small gift bag on the entry table. Inside was a tie I'd never wear and a handwritten note in a careful loop that wasn't hers. "Thank you for tonight. You looked sharp." My stomach didn't drop. It was more like a weather report confirming what the sky already told you. Storms north. Wind at your back. Keep driving. I didn't ask. I put the note back in the bag and set it where I found it. The message had arrived in my house by invitation, not accident. If someone wants you to chase, they leave breadcrumbs. If someone wants to avoid blame, they leave breadcrumbs shaped like an apology. 2 nights later, she crawled into bed closer than she'd been in months. Her hand hovered on my chest like a question she didn't want answered. "I miss us," she whispered. "Which part?" I asked. She was quiet a long time. "The part where you made me feel safe." "I can't be safe and invisible," I said. "Pick one." She pulled her hand back like I'd burned her. Turned over. The bed went cold again. Friday, I got a call from my mother. I don't tell my family much, and I wasn't about to start, but she's the kind of woman who can hear change in how you breathe. "You sound like you're carrying rocks," she said. "I'm just tired." "Then put some down," she said, simple as a grocery list. That night, I drafted a list, real rocks I could set down. I canceled the streaming services she alone used. I unsubscribed from the farm box she always forgot to pick up. I moved my direct deposit to the new account. I arranged for a storage unit near the cabin and booked it under my middle name. And I made one more appointment with a notary to draft a letter that would matter later. Clean dates. Clear numbers. No bluffing. No noise. Saturday, Claire floated into the kitchen in a dress I hadn't seen in years, the kind that turns heads because it's quiet, not loud. She twirled like we were still us and asked, "You notice anything different?" I sipped my coffee. "You look like you." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I was thinking we could go to that wine bar on Mercer. The one with the piano." "Can't," I said. "I'm driving out to the cabin." "The cabin?" She laughed like it was a joke. "Since when do you go there?" "Since always," I said. "You just never cared to ask." Something unsteady flickered in her. "Do you need space? Is that what this is?" "I need honesty," I said. "Space is just what happens when you don't get it." She chewed her lip and looked past me, not at me. "Okay," she said finally, voice small. "Okay." I packed a duffel and left without drama. The road to the cabin cuts through fields where the wind glides like a hand across tall grass. It reminded me the world is bigger than the room where two people pretend not to be hurting each other. I spent the day fixing what was mine to fix, resealed the window frames, reset the gutter that had pulled loose in a storm, sharpened the axe. At dusk, I sat on the porch and watched the sky move from orange to a blue so deep it felt like a body of water. My phone buzzed 3 times. "Claire, you okay?" / "When are you back?" / "We need to talk." I put it face down. Not punishment, proportion. When I finally drove home, the house smelled like her perfume and candle smoke. She was at the table with papers spread out like a dealer opening a hand. Marriage certificates, tax returns, a printout of our mortgage. My name looked strange on the page, like a word you stare at too long until it doesn't mean anything. "I thought we could get organized," she said, too bright. "For what?" "For us," she said. "To be clear." I looked at the stack. On top, there was a folder from a realtor I didn't recognize. Crest and Heath Downtown Lofts. A page stuck out with a yellow tab. I didn't read it. I didn't have to. My gut already knew this wasn't about minimalism or spring cleaning. "Since when do we need a realtor to talk about us?" I asked. She froze, just a second. Then she smiled the kind of smile people practice in mirrors. "Oh, that work thing," she said, sliding the folder under another stack, like hiding a knife under napkins. I didn't call it out. Not yet. The thing about truth is, if it's real, it doesn't need you to drag it into daylight. It walks there on its own. We sat in that room for an hour making lists that weren't really lists. She tried to hold my hand once. I let her fingers touch my knuckles and didn't close the gap. The clock on the wall ticked like a metronome for a song neither of us could carry anymore. That night, the house slept the way a stage sleeps after the actors leave props in place, lights down, the air still holding their lines. I lay awake listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional car outside and thought about the final steps. They were simple, really. Goodbyes always are if you've been leaving in your heart for long enough. And still, there was a part of me that wanted to be wrong. Wanted her to turn to me in the dark, say the thing that breaks the spell. But the room stayed quiet, and I stayed awake, and morning eventually arrived with the kind of light that doesn't forgive. Sunday delivered a small omen. A courier envelope addressed to Claire arrived with no return address. She wasn't home. I set it on the console table and went to mow the lawn. When I came back, the envelope was gone and the recycling bin was suspiciously full for a house that hadn't had breakfast yet. I pulled a flattened page from under a magazine. A shadow of a logo bled through the paper, Crest and Heath again, and the ghost of a line I could barely make out, occupant 2. Underscore 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 underscore. The blink line looked louder than any name. I slid the magazine back over the page and closed the bin. If someone digs a hole in your yard, you don't jump in to ask why. You mark it, you walk around it, and you decide where to put the fence. By Monday morning, I had my date. The plan wasn't theatrical. It didn't need to be. 2 weeks. That's what I gave us. Not for saving. For clarity. For the truth to do what truth does, arrive. Unavoidable. Undeniable. And when it did, I promised myself this. There'd be no yelling, no pleading, no dramatic speeches. Just a door opening, then closing, and a man stepping into the kind of quiet that heals. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known was how, in the end, it wouldn't be me doing the leaving at all. Not technically. Not the way either of us expected. The week dragged on like wet cement. I kept my head down, stuck to routine, and waited. Inside, though, I was done. Done questioning, done chasing, done hoping. On Tuesday, the bank called. Sir, can you confirm you signed as guarantor for a lease at Crest and Heath Lofts? The rep asked. I froze. No, I didn't sign anything. We've halted the transaction and flagged it as fraud, she replied. Fraud. The word clung to the inside of my skull like tar. I didn't need a detective to tell me who tried to use my name. That evening, Claire played the perfect wife. Dinner on the table, candles lit, wine poured. Almost laughably rehearsed. When she finally sat across from me, she folded her hands like she was bracing for court. I think we need to separate, she said softly. On good terms. I've already found a temporary place. It'll be cleaner this way. I nodded once. Okay. Her eyes flickered in shock. She expected begging, maybe shouting. Not calm acceptance. Then a knock at the door. She jumped like a guilty teenager. On the porch stood a courier with a package. White box, beige ribbon. He read the label aloud. Welcome package for new tenants. Crest and Heath Lofts. To Claire Bennett and Evan Price. The air between us snapped like glass. She signed with trembling fingers. I didn't move. Back inside, the box sat on the counter, glowing like a bomb. It's just a mistake, she stammered. He's just a colleague. I slid a folded paper across the table, the bank's fraud notice with her forged e-signature. A mistake. I asked quietly. Or a new life you tried to build with my name as the foundation? She couldn't answer. That was it. No shouting match, no slam doors. Just silence. The kind that tells you a chapter is over. That night, while she cried in the bedroom, I sat in the den packing a single duffel bag. Wallet, documents, the essentials. The rest of it, the furniture, the photos, the house itself, didn't matter anymore. Because she was right. I didn't feel like home to her. And by morning, she didn't feel like home to me either. When the sun rose, I walked out the door without a sound. I didn't look back.